Okay, guys. So today we're going to continue working on the writing section, but we're going to start a new, well, we're going to go with the last question, right? Do you remember how many tasks we had in the writing? Does anyone remember?
2 tasks.
Yeah, that's right. We had 2 tasks. The first one was the one we saw last class, the integrated writing. And finally, we're here in the independent writing, which is the last one you get in the writing section and therefore in the whole test. This one is, it's very similar to in the independent speaking, if you guys remember, but either way we're going to see it. You're just going to have to write an essay writing about your opinion on a certain topic. You will have 30 minutes to write this essay. So you have 10 more minutes that you had in the integrated. Now we know what the rubrics are. They are exactly the same, to be honest, that they were in the speaking. So they look at content, they look at the language that you use, the organization, they look at the way that you deliver your response and explain everything. So we're not going to go through that. Now, what is important about this task? So in the independent writing, you guys will always have a paired choice question. Okay, so what does that mean, a paired choice question? It means that you will have a question that is giving you 2 or sometimes, but really rarely, more options. So they basically all the time give you 2 or more options from which to choose. And the only thing that you actually need to do is choose one of those options. So for example, they can ask you something like, do you agree or disagree with this statement? And they say online education is better than the traditional one. So maybe you don't see it yet, but you have 2 options here, right? One option would be saying, well, I do agree. That means that you prefer online education. And the second option would be saying that you disagree, which means that you feel that the traditional type of education is better. So you have 2 options. You can agree or you can disagree with this topic. The second type of question is exactly the same. They just phrase it differently. So they can say, some people prefer online education and others prefer traditional classroom learning. What do you prefer? So the same thing, you have 2 options. You can choose online or you can choose traditional, but you still have 2. Or sometimes they can give you more than 2, so they can say, which of the following do you think is most effective when learning? Online education, traditional education, or maybe mixed education, I don't know. So you have 3 options in that case, but you still have to do the same. You need to choose one of those options and explain why in your essay. So this is a type of question that you guys are going to have. It's never going to be different than that. You get one of those, and that's it. They give you 30 minutes, your timer starts running, countdown, and you need to start writing your essay. Okay? Now the topics are actually the same that we had in the speaking. So most of the time it's either going to be about work life or academic life. So education, schooling, college, or work life. Sometimes they ask you about things like health or hobbies or usually those. And sometimes, but this is not that common, they ask you something about technology, let's say the use of TV, the use of social media, sometimes finance, so simple finance decisions like savings or investing. And a few questions are going to be about the environment. So things that are that have an impact on the environment. So that is basically it. They just give you the question, you get 30 minutes, and you need to start writing your essay. So any questions so far? Is this okay? Is this structure clear?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, guys. So that is great. Now, before we look at how to do it in an example, I want you guys to read what the ETS says. Okay, these are their writing tips for the independent question. So I think this is really important to consider. Let's see. Okay. So first thing they say is to earn a top score. So if you guys want to get a top score, you should develop a multi-paragraph essay. So first of all, you need to have more than just one paragraph, right? Multi-paragraph. You can not only have one single paragraph explaining why. This is not a speaking response. So it has to be an essay. It needs to be an essay. It needs to respond the issue of, well, the question. In this case, they're talking about the example they give. So their example was television advertising directed toward young children aged 2 to 5 should not be allowed. So that was their question. So in this case, they say you should write an essay that has more than one paragraph, and it needs to respond the issue of whatever they're asking, right? Now they say typically an effective response will contain a minimum of 300 words. So that is correct too. So in order for your response to be effective, it shouldn't be so short. It has to be at least 300 words. Now, honestly, I wouldn't worry too much about this, because if you follow the steps that I'm going to give you, and if you include all the elements that you should have, you are very likely going to have more than 300 words. So don't worry too much about the number of words. That's not really an indicator of how good your essay is. You could have less words, but it could still be a good essay. Okay, so that's one thing. Then they say that you have to basically explain why, right? So you need to kind of provide reasons why you have that certain opinion. So they give you some examples of what reasons you can have. If you agree and if you disagree, okay, so some examples. Then they say, keep in mind that there is no correct answer. So it doesn't really matter what you choose, right? The important thing is not what option you have chosen, but how you explain that option, how you explain why you chose that option. So you can choose whatever you want. There's no right or wrong answer in this question. Either side of the issue can be supported with examples and reasons. So you need to give examples and reasons, not only reasons. Okay, that's one thing that people forget about, the examples. And they say the important part of this task is to make sure that you state your opinion and develop your response. You have to be well developed. Development of your essay is judged by the amount and kinds of support, reasons, examples, details that you present. Right? So the development of your essay is going to be judged based on the things that you use to support your position. Okay, development is not simply the number of words you write. So it doesn't matter if you write 900 words, if you're not actually explaining your position, then it doesn't count. It should be well organized. The reader should be able to read from the beginning to end without becoming confused. And you should be sure not to just repeat the same information in different ways. So please make sure that you're avoiding to being redundant. You're not just repeating in circles the same information all over again. And then they also say the quality and accuracy of the sentence structure and vocabulary you use is also very important. So this is basically grammar and vocabulary, right? And then they give you the rubric. So that is what the ETS says. That's everything they tell you to do or not to do. And we're going to try to meet that criteria that they have, those standards. Okay, any questions about what we just read or what the TOEFL is expecting or the ETS is expecting from your response? Okay. So let's start right off with an example and see how we have to write this essay. So we're going to be working on this question here. Can anybody please read the question?
Example 1. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Sometimes it is better to be dishonest with people than to always tell them the truth. Use specific reasons and details to support your answer.
Okay, thank you. So that was the question. Now, can anyone tell me what the two options here are? What can we choose from?
Whether to support the fact that it is good to sometimes lie to people, which they're called white lies, and the other side is always be truthful or always tell the truth.
Okay, great. That's perfect. Thank you. So yes, the first option is we say, yeah, I think that it's okay to lie sometimes. And the second is, no, I think that you should always be 100% honest. So those are our two options. Now, the first thing that I want you to know is that no matter what happens, you always have to choose one of them. Okay, you need to have a strong position and a strong opinion here. This test is trying to see if you can express your opinion. And if you don't have one opinion, then you need to make it up. Okay, so even if you don't have an opinion on this, even if you don't really care, you think that both are reasonable options, you need to make sure that you choose one of those. Okay, please always do that. Don't ever like hesitate, or in your essay, don't try to be like, well, I think that it's okay to lie sometimes, but on the other hand, I believe that maybe it would be better to always tell the truth. So that is not clear at all. You will have problems when writing your essay with the structure, with how clear it is, with giving reasons and everything else. You need to make sure that you choose one side. So which one are we gonna choose? What do you guys think is easier to talk about?
To be honest, I'd rather
If
to
you
talk
can't decide,
about
what
the
you can
second
do
one.
is like, okay, the first option, lie sometimes?
No, the second option.
Oh, okay, the second option. And why?
Shamir. Always be honest.
Okay, so can you guys give me some reasons why being honest would always be the right choice?
I think that honest is a quality, is value always looked for many companies, and if a people can lie sometimes, then they'll continue. He'll continue lying and lying, and then he will cause many troubles with that behavior.
Okay, so you're talking here about companies. That means that you're seeing it from the like the career related view. So how
Yes,
professional honesty helps you professionally? Is that what you mean?
yes. The companies. I read sometimes that companies are looking for honest people for internships and for training.
Okay, yes, we can talk about that, sure. So one reason would be in order to get maybe better job opportunities, you need to be honest, because that's going to help you in your career. Okay, could be. What about the second reason? Can anyone else think of something else?
The truth always gets to you. Like, even if it's a little lie, the truth always appears.
Okay, so yes, the truth always comes out, we could say. Okay, that's right. So yeah, I think that we can work on that too. So those are fairly good reasons, I'd say. What you want to make sure is when you're thinking what your reasons are going to be, because you need to do this before you write your essay, you need to do this outline. You need to think of what your decision is going to be and the reasons that you're going to give are. And you need to make sure that the reasons that you're coming up with are different from each other, right? In order to avoid being redundant. Remember what the ETS said, right? So if the first one is about your professional life, then that's okay. And if the second one is different and it's about your personal life, and that maybe it's gonna be, the truth is gonna be found out and you're gonna maybe get some sort of punishment, that has to do with your personal life. So I think we can work with those two. Okay. So then this is the one that we're gonna go for. You only need two reasons. If you remember, from the response tips that we read, they don't exactly tell you how many reasons or details or examples you should have, right? They are, as long as you have more than one paragraph and you have reasons and details, then you'll be fine. So my advice is write down only two reasons, talk about only two ideas, two key points. Because if you write about three ideas, then you don't have enough time to do so, and it's very likely that you will make more mistakes. If you write only about two ideas, then less, I don't know, it's kind of less easy to be redundant for once, and you have more time to go back and check your essay. So since they don't give you a specific number of reasons that you have to name, you can go with 2, which I would say is the minimum amount that you should have. Okay, 2 reasons. You can write one more, but I don't think it's necessary, and you'll see that it's way better to only write down 2, because we don't really have a lot of time to waste. So this is what we're gonna do then. Any questions so far about this process of outlining the reasons? Okay. Then here's the template that we're gonna use. This is what we're gonna have in our essay. As you can see, we have 4 paragraphs, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're gonna have 4. We'll have 1 introduction and 1 conclusion and 2 body paragraphs, okay, in our essay. So the introduction, the body, which are gonna be 2 body paragraphs, and finally the conclusion. The conclusion, to be honest, is optional, but I think that given that this is an argumentative essay, it should have a conclusion. Even if it's short, try to have a short conclusion in there. So in the introduction, what are we gonna do? I'm gonna pinpoint it here. So for the introduction, a good introduction a basic introduction should have at least 2 things. First of all, you should state your opinion. So you should answer the question, right? You should at least answer the question and say, I think that it's better to always tell the truth. In other words, but you should say that. And it should also have a transitional phrase. These are the 2 basic, very basic things that you need to make sure your intro has. Your opinion, which is your answer to the question, and this transitional phrase, which is something like, I will explain why in this essay. Those are the 2 basic elements. Now, if you want to go farther than that, if you usually have more time, then you can also add 2 more sentences before. In the first one, you can give a little bit of context to talk about the topic in general. And in the second sentence, you can paraphrase the question. Okay, so here is basically the problem, the issue that we're going to be answering. So those 4 sentences are the ones that we're going to have in our introduction. As I'm saying, the first 2 are optional. You don't have to have them in order for it to be an intro. The other 2 are mandatory. You need to have your opinion and a transitional phrase. Okay? Now, the first sentence, the context. How do we do that? So I want you guys to think of what the general topic in this question is. Okay, so for example, in this question, what is it about? What is your essay going to be about? What would you say? Without getting in any details, what is this essay going to be about? There's one keyword here.
That always to be honest is better than to lie.
Okay.
Even
That's what you're trying to prove, right? So that is kind of your thesis statement. That is your opinion. But in general, in one word, what is this essay about? Anyone?
Honesty.
Exactly. It's about honesty. That is the keyword, honesty. So no matter what your position is or what the options are, in general, this is just about honesty, how honest one should be. So that is the topic, honest. You can also even go farther and you can say this is about values, or this is about I don't know, like personal development, whatever you want to say. But generally speaking, I'd say it's about honesty. So always think of that word. Like, for example, if I ask, do you think that it's better to travel alone or with a companion? What would the topic be in that case?
Traveling.
Exactly, traveling. Or maybe you can say recreation or vacations, but you need to go for the general topic. Don't get into the details yet. So you're gonna, in the first sentence where I'm telling you, give some context, you're gonna talk about that topic in general. And you're gonna try to think of something that most people would agree with. So you need to kind of say, okay, what would everyone say about honesty? Or what would everyone say about values? What can you say? So that is going to be your first sentence, giving a bit of context. One way to do so is using this template and saying most people would agree that whatever your topic is, you can add something there, is of paramount importance for or when. So you can say that. So for example, you could say most people would agree that defining one's values is of paramount importance for the development of a human being. Okay, so I'm just talking about something that everyone would agree with, right? It's important to know what you believe in. It's important to know what your values are. So that is what I'm saying. So that is kind of your emergency plan. If you don't know what to say, just tell me why this topic is important. Or you can just say most people would agree that honesty is at the core of, I don't know, of the values taught at home, or honesty is key for educating children. So something that everyone would agree with. Okay, can anyone think of something we can say here to give some context? You don't necessarily have to use these words, but this is in case you don't know anything else to say. You can think of anything else to say. So what can we say about honesty or values? What can we say about honesty? Maybe Marco. Any suggestions?
Okay, I'm thinking, and maybe like say the truth is not always easy, especially when you say something tough, maybe, or something hard.
Okay. So yes, we can say that. We can maybe start. Okay, we're gonna delete this part and say most people would agree that telling the truth is not always easy.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that it? Anything else? So I think that this is okay, but it's not that general either, right? I think this is kind of like a position. So you're getting into one side. I think that this would be like an argument if you disagreed with the topic. So you would say, well, I disagree because telling the truth is not always easy. So this isn't as general as maybe what I was looking for. And it may be complicated to explore that idea later because you're just kind of adding a counter argument here, right? You're saying the opposite of what you actually believe in according to your essay. So I don't know, you could still work with that. You could say most people would agree that telling the truth is not always easy. However, I feel that you should always be 100% honest for these reasons. So you can do that. That's another way of making an intro. Not in this specific template, but you can do it. So should we do that then? Or does anyone else have anything in mind that we can say in the first line? Okay, so if we're gonna do that, then it would be different, right? We're gonna have to then create another template for another introduction. In this case, if your first line is gonna be the counter argument, that means the opposite of what you are supporting or you are explaining in your essay, then your second sentence is gonna be you objecting that idea. So this is gonna be your opinion. And the first one should be the opposite of your opinion, right? And then the transitional phrase. So that can work as well. As I'm saying, there are many ways of building an intro. So maybe we can do this somewhere else here. Delete this part. Okay, so most people would agree that telling the truth is not always easy. So that is the opposite of what your opinion is. In that case, in the next sentence, you should state your opinion and try to contrast it, right? So, however, or nevertheless, and here you need to answer the question and tell me your opinion. So how can you guys paraphrase that idea? That you should always be 100% honest, no matter the circumstance. What can we say there, in other words?
Nevertheless, I advocate the idea that to be honest always is better than to say some lies.
Okay. But being honest is always better.
Than sometimes to say some lies.
And then to sometimes tell some lies. Okay. Okay. Okay, so then in that case, that's going to be our answer to the question, right? The counter argument, our opinion, which is the answer to the question. And finally, we have a transitional phrase in which we're just going to say, I hold this opinion for 2 reasons, which will be addressed in the following paragraphs. So try to have something like that. It could be simpler if you want, but please don't summarize the reasons, okay? Leave that for the conclusion. Don't summarize the reasons yet. Don't tell me, I hold this opinion since I don't know, it helps you in your career and or get better job opportunities and the other reason. Don't summarize them, just have this transitional phrase. Okay, then this could be our introduction. It's okay. So we're gonna delete this part. So is it okay then, the introduction? Do you have any questions so far? Okay. Transitional phrase is gonna be this one. So that's it, that's the introduction. After you're done with the introduction, you need to start the body, right? I'm gonna. So for the body paragraphs, the 2 basic things that you need to make sure you have in the body, one of them is your idea, your reason number 1. And the second one is at least one example. Okay, reason, and not necessarily an example, but it has to have some sort of evidence, preferably an example. Okay, so those are the 2 main things that you need to make sure you have, your reason and an example, some evidence. Now, if you want to go farther, you can also add 2 more sentences. After you explain the reason and after the evidence, you can have a closing idea or a closing argument. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. In the first reason, we said that it was about your professional life, right? How honesty helps you in your professional life. So we're gonna explain this idea here. We're gonna have a transition in the beginning to start first, to begin with, and then we have the idea. So how can we say this? Maybe Shamir, you that had the idea?
I'm thinking how to say this. To start, many companies are looking for honest people instead of hiring new employees that used to lie.
Okay.
And then, for instance, or for example, when I was applying for an internship, in the interview, the honesty was one of the most important values in the company. And I don't know, the questions were the questions they asked me were aimed at I don't know, something like that, I suppose, describing a little the interview, and
Mhm.
I don't know.
Okay, that's okay. So yes, I like your example. I like the fact that it's a personal experience, and I was gonna get there in a minute. So before we get into the example, this is your reason, right? Many companies are looking for honest people instead of hiring new employees that are used to lie. So that is great. This is kind of, I would say you're inverting the order. This is the explanation of the reason. Now I want you guys to know that in your body, before the example, you need to make sure that you're really showing how your reason, so in this case that companies look for honest people, is connected to your opinion that it's always better to tell the truth. So tell me something like, I would add something like, as a result, I don't know, when you tell the truth or when you're honest, then you get, or you have better chances at getting your dream job or something like that. So something that tells me how this is connected to being honest, right? I would have something like that. Make sure that it's clear how being honest is gonna have this advantage or give you this advantage. Okay, so how can we do that? Can anybody write that part? Maybe Diego?
The second reason? Or
Not the second reason here. One more sentence explaining the connection between this idea that companies look for honest people and that the idea that therefore you should always be honest.
mm, I don't have an example
Okay.
or to connect the idea.
Okay, so maybe we can do something temporary and we could say something like therefore, as a result, hence, when one possesses or when you, let's say, okay, when one possesses this value, they are more, or they have an edge maybe over other candidates when applying for a job. Okay, so something like this, when you basically, I'm saying one, now this is another thing, right? There's a lot of things to consider here. Now the pronouns that you're gonna use is another thing. Honestly, you can just be a little bit more informal and say when you, so when you possess or when you have this value, when you possess this value, you have an edge over other candidates when applying for a job, right? So it's the same. It doesn't matter what pronoun you use. You can use you, but try not to use I, right? When I, so could be second person. Try not to say we either, first person. When we possess this value, we have an advantage. Use the second person. I think that's the most ideal pronoun you can use. So when you possess this value, you have an edge over other candidates when applying for a job or a position. Okay, so something like this. It's not great, but I think it covers that idea. And after you explain, so you have your reason, you explain a bit more if you need to, then you need the example, right? Now, my advice, since you guys are gonna have to give 2 examples in your 2 body paragraphs, if you want a top score, and I think that all of you can do this, honestly, try to have in the first body paragraph a personal example, okay? Try to have a personal example because this is gonna give you the chance to do what Shamir was doing, right? Use different tenses, different grammar. So for example, here you're mixing the past continuous with the simple past, right? You're using larger structures, more complex sentences. So try to use at least one personal experience, and the other example can be just a general one. It doesn't have to be personal anymore. But in this one, try to tell a story. Okay, so when I was applying for an internship, in the interview, honesty was one of the most important values for the company. Now, what else can we say here for the example? Remember that you don't have to have this experience, right? Your imagination is way better than having personal experiences. You can make up anything you want as long as it's illustrating this reason. It has to make sense. If you're saying that when you're an honest person, you have better opportunities, your example needs to show that, needs to illustrate, okay, there was this time when I was being honest and I had this amazing opportunity because of that. Okay, so you need to show that in your example. So how can we do it? Can anyone complete this idea, this example? Maybe Luciana, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say something like this proves the fact that being honest is one of the main values for an employee to have, something like that. Right now, I don't know.
Okay, I love that, and we can definitely use it. But what you're doing is actually the 4th sentence. You're having your closing idea, and you're telling me how your example connects to your reason.
Oh, okay.
So this is great, but for the last part, what I would suggest is that you guys try to continue with the example. If you look at some examples, I'm going to show you some examples if we have time. But the example should be around 60% of your paragraph. So use that opportunity with your example to, I don't know, to kind of elaborate the idea as much as you can, support it. So you can maybe get a little bit more specific, more personal. So you're just saying that that honesty was something they were looking for. But what happened next? Were you honest? If they hired you because of your honesty, or maybe they didn't hire you because you lied about something during the interview. So what can we say?
Since the areas of projects for the company, or I don't know, something related to the area of the company. For example, since the company worked in cooperation with the government and had to manage many economical resources.
Okay, so you're telling me why it was important for them to have honest people as a team. Is that what you're doing? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so you're continuing. Okay, yes, you can say honesty was one of the most important values since.
Or maybe like the company said that they had a past experience of people who, I don't know, did dishonest things, like they took money from the company, something like that. They had a past experience with dishonesty that made them value honesty even more on their new employees.
Exactly. Okay, let's just say something simple. They had a negative experience with dishonest people before. So what I want to say here, like, for example, when you're doing this, you can use this advantage to use, like, let's say what is this called? The past perfect, right? Since they had previously had, or they had had a negative experience with dishonest people before, because I'm talking about something that happened before a specific point in the past, right? So I'm trying to combine content and grammar, but that's a great idea. So yes, I'm explaining why it was important for the company to have honest people in their team. And I would try to also talk about myself. So maybe you can say something like, I don't know, during the application process, let's say, they found out I had lied in my resume, let's say, about speaking Chinese. Okay, so something like that. During the application process, they found out that I was lying and they didn't hire me for this reason. So that would explain, right? That would kind of show that why it's important to be honest in order to get to be selected as a candidate, right? During the application process, they found out that I had lied in my resume about speaking Chinese, and in turn did not hire me for the position. Okay, so something like this. Do you know what I'm doing? So I'm just explaining the same thing, why it's important to be honest. So that can be our example. I think it's a great idea. It's well explained. It's about 60% of our paragraph. So do you have any questions about the example? Do you understand how it's connected to our reason and to our position? Is it okay?
Yes, I think it's understandable.
Okay, that's great. And then the last sentence is just going to be a closing idea, which can be something like Luciana said, right? This proves the fact that being honest is one of the main values for an employee to have when seeking a job opportunity. So you just tell me how this example proves your point or demonstrates your point. So you could say, this shows, this demonstrates, this proves, or this is a clear or a glaring example of. So something like that, that summarizes the whole thing that you've said in your paragraph. If you're telling a personal experience, you may also want to consider including something like a conditional sentence. So for instance, you could also say, let me show you. You could say something like, if I hadn't lied in my resume, maybe I would have been hired, right? Or maybe I would have gotten the job. So when you have that conditional, you're doing the same thing. You're saying, okay, it's important not to lie so that you can get the job, but you're also using more grammar, which is something great to use. You can even do an inversion and say, hadn't I lied in my resume, or had maybe just something simple, had I been honest, or had I been sincere, let's say, maybe or perhaps I would have been, or I could have been, gotten the position, or I could have gotten the opportunity. Or let's just say I could have been selected. Okay, so you can also have something like this. Had I been honest, then maybe I would have gotten the job. So it's a third conditional, it shows good grammar, and it's still doing the same purpose of connecting the idea that it's important to be honest in order to apply for jobs. Okay, and that is basically your body paragraph. Any questions about that, about the body? I'm gonna do it. Is it okay, the elements that your body needs?
Do you recommend a minimum of lines in a paragraph for this task?
Okay, that's a great question. So actually, I do. Like, if you have 3, you have 4, then it's probably not gonna go to. It's not gonna be 300 words total. So I would say the introduction and the conclusion could be short. It's okay if you have 3, if you have even 2 lines in the intro and the conclusion. Now for the body, I'd say at least 6 each paragraph. But if you have 7, then it's not a bad idea. So at least 6 for the body, and in the intro and conclusion, it could be 2, it could be 3, or it could be 4. Depends on how many sentences you have. So yeah, you know what I would say? In your reason, doesn't have to even be that long. Your reason, you could just have one of these 2 sentences that we have, right? It could be this one here. When you are honest, you have an edge over other candidates, or this one here, companies are looking for honest people. And then in your example, you can have at least 2 or 3 sentences, I'd say. And then the closing idea is again optional, right? The important thing is always going to be one reason and maybe 2 or 3 sentences for the example. The closing idea and the explanation are optional. Okay. Any other questions so far? Okay. Then now the other body paragraph is going to be exactly the same as we just did. You will have the exact same things. You're just going to explain the other idea. You cannot repeat the same idea or something similar because you will sound like you're just repeating the same. So you need to talk about the second idea, in this case, that the truth always comes to light, that it's going to be discovered and you're going to get in trouble for lying. So you explain this idea. You need to have an example too. My advice, if you have already used a personal example here in the first body paragraph, you don't have to do the same in the second. Save time. You probably won't have enough time to do your 2 huge body paragraphs with perfect grammar and everything else. In the second body paragraph, you can just limit yourself to using the simple present with a general example. It can be something shorter. It's not a problem. You have already used everything you needed to use, and you had everything you need in your first one. So the second one can be shorter. It can be 6 lines or 5, but the first one could be a bit longer, and your example and everything should be more elaborated. Okay, that's my advice because we don't have that much time. So is it okay so far? Any questions before we start with the conclusion?
No, I don't have questions.
Okay, that's good. Now in the conclusion, which is optional, you should always have at least a summary of your reasons. And finally, you need to restate or basically repeat your position. Okay, or your opinion, in other words. So that is what we're gonna do. First thing, we're gonna summarize the reasons that we have mentioned. That's why I told you not to summarize them in the intro. So in the conclusion, you're gonna summarize them. You're gonna say something like this if you want. So in conclusion, or in short, having seen that, which basically means we have already seen or explored these 2 ideas. So having seen that, and here you summarize the first and the second reason. So having seen that, you could say an honest person has better job opportunities, and the other one, I think it was, I don't know, avoids getting in trouble. I believe it is safe to say that, and then you repeat your position, that you should always be completely honest with everyone, no matter the circumstance, regardless of what the circumstance is. So that's basically it. You summarize your reasons and you restate your argument or your position. Can anyone do the first thing? How can we summarize these 2 reasons? That companies are looking for honest people, and that the truth always comes to light, sorry. Any ideas? Maybe, yes, sure.
I don't know, but could it be a good idea to say in the first part, in the conclusion, in short, having had that bad experience related to my internship, to my application for internship, and believing that most times it's better to say the truth instead of telling lies. I could say that, to be honest, is one of the most important qualities. I don't know, something,
Yeah,
or
I mean,
or at,
it's, yeah.
no, I was talking about this, the first part in the conclusion. In short, having had that bad experience related to my to a possible job opportunity.
Yes, I mean, you can do it. You can refer, what you mean is instead of referring to the reasons, talk about the examples, right? Is that what you mean?
Yes, just talking about examples instead
Okay.
of giving the reasons.
Uh, you can do it, but I think that it would be less less objective, right? Because in this case, you need to think of the example as evidence for this reason. And the reason is not supposed to be something that you think, but something that is a fact, right? A reality. So the reality is that people look for honest people, or companies look for honest people. So when you use the reasons, you sound more objective. It's not like it's too personal, right? It's a bit more objective, maybe a bit more academic in that case. When you go with the examples, especially if they are personal examples and they're not examples that, like real world examples, that something that you can find maybe online or something, then it becomes more personal, and therefore maybe like less supportive. Your opinion is less supportive. So that's why I would say it's better to write about the reasons. But either way, this is a personal essay. So yes, you can talk about your experiences. So having had these two awful experiences when being dishonest, that's why, or this is why I'm convinced that you should always tell the truth. Or this is why I always tell the truth personally. So yes, you can do it. It depends on the approach. It depends on how your essay, how you want your essay to be. If you don't care that it's too personal, then it's okay. Like, I think both are correct, or like possible options.
Okay, thank you.
So what do you think then? What should we do? Any suggestions for that first part before we go? Okay. What about you, Marco? What would you say there?
In short, having seen that many companies are looking for honest people, and truth always come to, I didn't remember that part.
And the truth always was lie, yes.
Why? And yeah, the rest is, I believe
it's safe to say. And how will you restate?
okay. I believe that, to be honest, could be hard, but it's always the best.
Okay. Maybe we could say that even if being honest could be hard, right? It's always the best.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So it's great. One thing I would say is, the reason why I wasn't writing down like many companies are looking for honest people is because generally speaking, you should try to avoid repeating the same words, right? So you need to paraphrase this a lot. So maybe it would be better if you can think of other way to say this, and same thing for the other one. And the same here, right? You don't have to copy and paste what you wrote in your intro. It has to be a little bit different. So that's what I could say. But yeah, it's perfect. The idea is great. Okay, guys. And that's basically it. The summary of the reasons and your position again. Now, what do you guys think? Do you have any questions so far about what we've done? There are some things that I wanted to say. Sorry. Yes, Marco, tell me.
Okay, at the beginning of the class, you show us a rubric of the ETS about how they qualify or how they grade this part. Can you send us the link, please?
Yes, of course. I'll send you this link. No problem.
Thanks.
Any other question? Any other thing? So my advice, practice and try to create your own template. You can memorize some phrases that you're going to use, like this one here, right? My personal experience and so on, or most people would agree, but you don't have to necessarily use these ones. Try to have the structure, yes, that's important, but you can create your own template, one that you feel confident with, one that you know it by heart, and that's going to also help you be more confident when you're writing these essay. Okay, guys. So if you don't have questions, please don't forget the daily survey where you go. And I'll be seeing you next class.
Ready. See you next class.
We have a
Bye-bye.
next class.
Oh, that's a great question, Luciana. I think that Shamia and Luciana, you guys this is your last class, I think. Well, you
I
have
think
to,
so too.
yeah, you have tomorrow to practice. Yeah, because we started with the reading with you guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, in that case, best of luck in your tests. I'm sure you guys will nail it. Practice, and if you ever have any questions, anything that I can help you with, don't hesitate to ask, to text me, and that's fine.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for everything.
Bye. It was really nice working with you guys.
Thank you very much, Andrea. We'll see you soon.
We will
Take
communicate
care.
our test results.
All right. Good luck. See you
Bye.